Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Samar Kamal, the VP of Marketing at Mine. Thank you for joining us again. We'll wait a couple of minutes for everybody to join us. I see more and more people joining us. So in a minute or so, we'll try to kick it off. Thank you. Okay, great. Let's do it. All right. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Samar Kamal, and I am the VP of Marketing and your host today. And I'm excited to really bring a very cool session for you today. It's a collaboration, something that we've been working with, ourselves, Mine with the Coro team, a security company, and we're building a really cool unified privacy and security solution. And as we're building the collaboration, we had tons of questions, from folks wanting to know more and more. And we really wanted to bring, a couple of our leaders to speak with you to answer some of the questions. What does it take to have a unified security and privacy solution? What are some of the challenges, things to take in consideration? So more than anything, this is going to be a highly educational session. Happy to take your questions as you think of them. Please drop them off in the session here. And yeah, let's kick it off. So with me today, I have a very, couple of people that I highly admire. Gal Golan, one of my managers and co-founder and CTO at Mine. Gal, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Mine OS.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Gal. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Mine OS. As an automation-first platform that focuses on privacy operations, I'm in charge of the technology, so in charge of the R&D group and charting the overall technical strategy of how the product should evolve. In my background, I come from engineering and cybersecurity for most of my career.
Great. Very cool. Thanks for joining us today, Gal. Beth, tell us a little bit about your experience and more about Coro.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in traditional IT for about 20 years. Much of that has been security focused and definitely focused on the small to mid-market business. And that's actually why I am here at Coro, because it's a platform that really strives to bring automation, security, and compliance elements together for that small to mid-market business. So happy to be here today.
Great, very cool. Great. You guys already talked about a lot of things that we'll be touching on, that convergence between privacy and security. You both see things from different corners, if you will. Excited to hear more. What does it take to build that strong foundation, that security and privacy program for different stakeholders there? We'll touch on that. And then going from there, not just the building that foundation and program, but future-proofing that data strategy. Again, we'll try to take any questions if we have any time left after that. Beth, I'd love to start with you. You're in the field. You talk to tons of people, I'm sure, every day. Talk to us about, your experience speaking with these folks. How do you see the interplay between privacy and cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, once upon a time, maybe not so long ago, our business data either, lived in a secure data center or on-premise infrastructure that was protected by layered perimeter security solutions. And that made both the security of the organization and the privacy of the data pretty straightforward and predictable. But much of our infrastructure and data is now in kind of disparate cloud applications, and a lot of those are not natively secure. And that can make protecting and securing your business and your sensitive data seem much, much more challenging. But we do know that not securing that data that resides in our cloud applications is really not an option, as that leads to security, privacy, and eventually compliance concerns. So with the rise of these cloud applications, privacy and security should be thought of really as interconnected, because ever more personal, financial, and other non-public information is really processed or stored online. And data privacy increasingly relies on good cloud security. And I'm sure Gal can touch a little bit more on that kind of connectedness.
Yeah, makes sense. And we think about always that security parameter and how it's always changing. The threat server is always changing, and so you touch on that. Gal, from your angle, you also have something else to worry about. There's data privacy and all the compliance and data regulation changes. How do you view things from your angle, please?
Yeah, so we actually find many things on the intersection between privacy and security. To list a few examples, so first of all, they share objectives. Data privacy regulations and cybersecurity best practices both have the shared goals of protecting sensitive information. Privacy regulations focus more on the rights of the individual, when in cybersecurity concentrates about the means to protect the data from breaches, for example, but they both share that same objective. Compliance is the second thing. So regulations like GDPR, CCPA introduce specific requirements for data protection, like encryption standards and breach notification timelines. So complying with these regulations inherently means adopting certain cybersecurity measures. And then training and awareness, of course. So both cybersecurity and best practices and compliance with data privacy laws are built heavily on staff that is adequately trained. Lastly, we have the risk management approach that's common for these two. So the methodology of identifying, minimizing, and accepting residual risk is, again, a common piece.
Yeah. You talked a lot about like the education of the folks, your own people. They could create, if they're not aware of privacy requirements, they might also on the security side, do something that they don't know is not right. And so educating and keeping folks, up to date, that's very, very important. Any other challenges, Beth, from your side that you view, when speaking with folks and how those two worlds collide together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we should really talk about is being transparent about data practices, that being the cornerstone of many privacy regulations, but also knowing that revealing too much about security practices and systems can provide, really increased potential, threat vectors for attackers. So really bringing balance to this is something that we should be looking at.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. So, Gal, we say this all the time. We live in a data-first world. Knowing this, and the fact that data comes from different places in the world, it comes in all sorts of types and shapes these days. How do you establish a strong foundation dealing with all this data from both the security and privacy perspective?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think we have three main principles that you should worry about when building out your systems or your organization, and that will help you later on. So the first example is getting visibility into your complete data inventory. So make sure you have an efficient system or process that helps you get that visibility and map out your entire company's data inventory. Ideally, that's continuously updated, covers all areas like SaaS application databases, cloud, on-prem, endpoints, devices, all of those. A data inventory, again, ideally includes a data classification mechanisms to report back on types of data that you have, your systems catalog that are in use, any data sources and connections between them, and even who has access to each one. Another point to consider is to make sure that system or process can evolve with your organization over time as your tech stack changes or becomes more complex. And that's usually where organizations will turn to third-party solutions or try to upgrade their way of doing it. Second point is equipping your engineers with the right tools and knowledge from the start, because an engineer that is aware and concerned about privacy is much more likely to build a more secure product from the start.
Mhm.
Lastly, I would say do your homework and pick the right vendors. We all use external vendors and SaaS applications that store customer data. Picking the right vendors that will support your privacy program rather than becoming a burden later down the road is essential. Today, every reputable vendor has an API and gives you controls over the customer data that they store for you. Vendors that do not have such controls will quickly become a liability and, to be honest, should be avoided.
Makes sense. Thank you. Beth, from your side, and I know there are certain things, fundamental things in security, we're pointing some of them here, such as data encryption, access controls, user
Mhm.
authentication strategy. Let's dig deeper. How do you view these things evolving these days, with all the challenges both of you have been speaking about? What are some of the strategies that Coro recommends?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I heard Gal touch on this briefly, on his last talking points, and that was the access. So it's important to note that for both data privacy and security, making sure that you can control who can access what, where, and how is like the foundational starting point that we can build up from. So some examples of this are access permissions, starting with the user credentials, making sure those are hardened, making sure those are changed, making sure those are complex, adding on multi-factor authentication strategies to really enable another layer of identification, even creating conditional access by locking down location by location, or even better yet, IP address to those cloud applications that house all our data, and also ensuring through encryption that the data that we're letting out of our organization is sealed up and protected while it's in transit.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think a good question here. I think this is for you, Galgo. Data minimization. Can an organization be fined for not adhering to data minimization? Is that an actual violation of GDPR?
Yes, data minimization is a core principle in GDPR. It's manifested in many different ways. So the violation depends on the way it's manifested, but yes, it is a core principle.
Very good. Very good. Thanks. This is good. Also, a segue to our next point. Gal, we talk a lot about privacy by design and those principles. This is something that it seems like it's fundamentally important when you build a privacy program. What does it really mean to you, privacy by design?
Privacy by design means a lot of things, but the number one principle is by far data minimization. That's the most important thing. It's a big thing. It means a lot, but I think the transition everyone needs to make is to think about data as a liability and rather than an asset. We're used to thinking as data as assets and to accumulate data, but data is a liability. The less data you have, the less data you need to worry about and protect. So that's how data minimization and privacy by design works perfectly for enhancing your security posture. I encourage my engineers to always think about, again, data as a liability. If they're planning a new feature, they would think twice if they really need to store a specific piece of customer data, or they can find a way to work around without that. Becoming used to such engineering processes will reward you down the road, not only in terms of security, privacy compliance, but also cost, because storing a lot of data is expensive. And then we have anonymization. So keeping anonymized data wherever you can, or anonymizing it as soon as you can, will directly reduce the number of data types you have to protect. It doesn't really matter if it's sensitive data or not, because again, security-wise, every data can become sensitive in the right context. And then lastly, enforcing retention policies or retention periods. So I'll share an example. We often see companies that are trying to automate the right to be forgotten on systems that have vast amounts of unstructured data, like logs. The problem in these systems is they're not very friendly for the types of manipulations required to automate right to be forgotten, like deleting or changing a specific record. Because they're huge scale, it's very hard to search through. They're unstructured, and you know what? Even changing logs is actually a bad security practice. By having a very strict retention policy for logs, you can just avoid all of that. So those are the foundations as I see them.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. So now let's kind of cross to, instead of the foundation, future-proofing data strategy. So many trending phrases and things that we hear about all the time, best future trends and challenges. How do you kind of view preparing for the future and some of the things that an organization, it's no longer living in the past, no longer just securing that parameter. How do you, any future trends that, CISOs and DPOs have to keep in mind? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, sorry, that was for
Yeah.
Gal, correct?
Um, which of you that think like,
Yeah.
you have a good
Yeah,
answer for this?
sure. Yeah, the AI sphere is moving fast, and regulators will try to keep up with it. So, know the details of these, compliances and these new bills before it's too late. AI is already widely adopted, and the regulation of that is quite behind. So we want you to be cautious about new risks while still embracing things. AI tech could bring newfound and convincing risks like deep fakes into play, and awareness and training then becomes even more important once we start stepping into these, new technologies.
Yeah, thanks. Gal, anything else to add?
Two trends that I think will increase a lot is automation and global policy. So automation, as privacy becomes more complex and specifically user rights get increased adoption, we will have to use more and more automation to keep up with this and also keep our operational cost low. And the second thing is, as privacy regulations get introduced in more and more geographies, it becomes very complex for a global organization to manage a privacy program that takes into account all of them with the, each regulation with its specific details. So I think we will see more and more companies adopt a global policy where they simply adhere to the most strict rule applicable to their customers.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Thank you. Beth, this is a question I think good for you. How drastically do you think AI will upend the current cybersecurity state?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to say I think that we should be. I mean, we should be cautious, but we should be embracing these emerging technologies. There's so many new ones coming out, and it seems like just the other day, AI was mostly fiction, and now intelligent automations and AI are part of our daily lives. From the virtual note taker that I use every day to your Siris and your Alexas, or using ChatGPT to write a reference letter for someone. We embrace these things in our daily lives to make them easier, but they can also be used to make our data safer and increase the effectiveness of our security if we're cautious and if we are knowledgeable about these new technologies that are coming out.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think this really connects, our last point, encouraging a proactive approach. Something, to Gal, I think this is good, for you as a leader. You speak to executives and board members all the time. What is the best way to convince leadership to embrace data privacy rather than collecting as much data as possible for maximum data insights? We always talk about customer trust and building that customer trust. How do you view that as becoming an advantage, if you will, to the company and the vendor?
So I would say, first of all, the leadership should view privacy as business enablement rather than liability. Um, as you embrace privacy and bake it into every process of your company, it really helps for doing business with other entities. It helps with compliance, which opens doors and for it just makes it easier to comply with other regulations. The second thing is trust. I think as a company that embraces privacy from the start, it shows to your customers. They see that. So increasing brand trust today in a world that everyone's concerned about privacy, everyone's aware, you cannot hide it. So increasing trust will increase brand loyalty, will enable business.
Thank you. It makes sense. Anything else to add on top of that, Beth?
Yeah, I think that the best practice overall is knowing that there are threats out there. There always will be. They're going to keep getting better, and we need to keep thinking about how we can use these emerging technologies to protect ourselves and our data, especially because those bad actors that are out there causing these threats, they're already using all of these technologies to
Yeah.
infiltrate and expose our data. So we got to, get on the ball there for sure.
Yeah. If we don't use them, they will.
Yeah, that's right. Or they are, so we may as well use them to protect ourselves as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you both. For I'm sure this has been the session. I love the questions that came in. I really appreciate both of your time. I hope for everybody that this has been an educational session, that you've learned a thing or two. For everybody, we saw the notes on the questions. We'll be circulating the presentation with everybody registered here. We'll put them on both the MinoS and the Coro YouTube channels as well. And on the deck, you'll see a link to book a demo if you're interested in with MinoS or Coro. Again, thank you, for our amazing leaders, and catch you on the next session. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.